You need this card when traveling in Japan, and let me tell you why. So this, and this, and this is a special card that you can get in Japan. It's called an IC card, and it's mainly used for paying for transit, aka your trains, your subways, your buses, and other forms of transportation that you may use during your trip. You can buy IC cards from most train stations, and I swear it is going to make your trip 100% easier. If you're living in Japan, then it's a must to get an IC card. But even if you're planning to travel to Japan basically more than once, it's a really good idea to invest in an IC card and just bring that every single time you travel in Japan. If you're looking to buy an IC card in Japan, there are a lot of different ones. So let's go through the different IC cards you can get in Japan. You don't buy the Suica from JR East or the Pasmo when you're in Tokyo because of a microchip issue. But you can buy these other ones instead. You can buy MATOKA from JR West in the Kansai region.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
You can also buy Pitapa in the Kansai region only if you have a Japanese bank account. You can buy Suica from JR Central in the Chugoku region. You can buy Mannaka by Meitetsu in Nagoya. You can buy Kitaka from JR Hokkaido in, you guessed it, Hokkaido. You can buy Sugoka from JR Kyushu in the greater Fukuoka area, and you can buy Hayakaken in the Fukuoka area. Now remember, all these cards can be used everywhere in Japan for the trains and the subways and even the buses. So it's just about getting your hands on one of these. So what's the difference between all of these cards? Now these specific cards are owned by JR companies, and a lot of the cards are actually owned by the JR trains. For the ones that aren't owned by JR, like Pasmo, for example, they are owned by the company that run the subways and other transportation systems, more of the privatized companies. Now, the cards are universal, so even if you get a Suica card from the JR line, it doesn't mean that you can only use it on the JR line. You can still use it for subways, buses, some of the taxis as well, and vice versa. If you get a Pasmo or one of the other cards that are affiliated with the subways instead, you can still use those on the JR trains. The only one that I would specifically watch out for is the Pitapa card. Now, all the cards that I mentioned are prepaid cards. So you're gonna put a certain amount of money in the card and then use that gradually. The Pitapa card is a little bit different because it links to your bank account and then takes that money out gradually. So it's not a prepaid card, it's technically a postpaid card. Now, my assumption with this is that you definitely need a Japanese bank account in order to use it. So for people who are traveling abroad, the prepaid cards are going to be your thing. So as I said earlier, you don't buy the Suica or Pasmo in Tokyo. I kind of mean you can't buy the Suica or Pasmo in Tokyo because of the microchip issue. So if you are traveling in Japan within the next, couple months, or I don't know how long it's actually going to take them to fix this problem because it's been quite some time, this is a card that you're not going to be able to get. So what do you do if you can't buy the Suica or Pasmo when you're in Tokyo? Let's say Tokyo is the first stop in your trip. What are you going to get as an IC card? So if you're not able to get the physical Suica card or just a physical IC card in general, you can download Suica on Apple Pay and Google Pay. Now, I've heard mixed reviews about this. For some people, it does work. For some people, it doesn't. It really depends on your phone. Before going, make sure to check the requirements and make sure to add Suica as a payment option in your Apple Pay or Google Pay, and hopefully that will work out for you. If you have certain types of phones, you might not be able to use Suica, so also make sure to check if your phone is eligible for the Apple or Google Pay Suica. Your second option is to buy an IC card outside of Tokyo. Now that you know which IC cards exist and where you can actually get them depending on where you are in Japan, these are available 100%. So as long as you're traveling outside of Tokyo, you should be able to get an IC card fairly easily. I know this is a little difficult if Tokyo is your first stop because you're not just gonna have an IC card available to you. But if you're easily going to Osaka, Kyoto, Hokkaido, or somewhere else in Japan as your first stop, or just a couple days after Tokyo, then you'll be able to hold out and then get one of your IC cards in one of those places. And finally, your last option is to use physical tickets or a city pass. Physical tickets are still pretty easy to buy. You can just buy a single ticket for one train ride, or you can buy a day pass as well. For tourists, you have a couple more options. I know Tokyo has a week pass, and I'll try to leave a little more information about that in the description below. But I highly recommend getting an IC card because there are actually a lot of uses for it. Okay, so you got your IC card. What can you use it for? And guys, I wouldn't be pushing you to get an IC card so badly if they didn't have multiple purposes, not just for the transport. So let me tell you what these guys can do. You can use it for trains, subways, and buses. In some places, they also have street cards and other forms of public transportation, and IC cards can be used for those as well. You can use it in convenience stores. Instead of using cash or credit card at every convenience store, you can use your IC card, and all you need to do is tap and go. You can use it for vending machines. Now, be warned, not all vending machines actually have IC capabilities, but I would say most of them, especially in Tokyo, do. Once again, it's a tap and go feature, so easy accessibility, and it's really fast. You can use it for restaurants. Whether it's a vending machine restaurant where you need to order at a vending machine like ramen or donburi places, or if it's a more fancy sit-down restaurant, a lot of restaurants are going to use IC as a payment. You can use it for arcades. Don't have enough coins for your favorite claw machine? It's okay, you can use your IC card instead. And you can use it for taxis. Now also beware of this because not all taxis accept IC cards. You know, some of the older taxis don't have those capabilities, but I would say a majority of the new taxis have IC card capabilities. And that's just a short list. I feel like you can pretty much go everywhere and there is some kind of availability to use your IC card as a form of payment. Now granted, it's not foolproof because there are still some places that specifically only use cash, but I would say after the pandemic too, a lot of payment is by card and a touchless system. And while we're on the subject of what you can use your IC card for, we should talk about what you can't use your IC card for. Now, as I said before, IC cards are pretty universal, but there are a few transportation methods that you aren't able to use the IC card on. Number one is the Shinkansen. You just can't use it. You need to buy a physical ticket at the train station for Shinkansen. A lot of the seats are also reserved, so that's another reason why you can't just tap and go like a regular train. And number two, just like the Shinkansen is a long distance train or long distance transportation, most other long distance transportations, especially those where you need to reserve a seat, are not IC card compatible. For example, the Narita Express, which takes you from Narita Airport to Tokyo and vice versa. And most of the buses that go long distances, like overnight buses, the Willer bus, those things, you can't use your IC card on those either. So if you're thinking of IC cards, just make sure to remember that it's more for jump on, jump off kind of transportation systems. It's not anything to actually use when you have to reserve a seat. I think it's also important to mention, where do you charge your IC card? The easiest place to charge your IC card is the train station, the place that you actually bought it. Most of the train stations are going to have a place where you can charge your IC card, whether it's in front of the gate before you actually get in, or inside the gate if you run out of money. You can also charge your IC card on the bus. You'll have to go to the front of the bus and ask the driver. You can say chaji and they'll know to charge the card. And finally, you can actually charge your IC card at convenience stores. Once again, you can just tell them chaji and give them some money and they'll charge the card for you. Okay, so you have your IC card now and you're using it for all types of payment, whether it's the trains, whether it's the vending machines, whether it's trying to win that prized possession in the claw machine. But the dangers of an IC card is that how do you know how much you're spending? Well, there's actually an app that will keep track of your purchases. The app is called Suicakeibo, and you can add multiple IC cards to the app and keep track of your purchase histories. Not only does it map out your transport, where you've used it to get on and get off, and which stations you use it at, but it also separates those transport costs from the cost of actual things. So when you use the card for restaurants, when you use the card for convenience stores, when you use the card for vending machines, it will keep track of those purchases as well. I'll also leave a link to that below. Highly recommend you download it. It's something that I personally didn't know existed until recently, and it really helped me while I was in Japan. So I don't know if I've convinced you yet that you really need an IC card if you're traveling in Japan. I think there are more than enough reasons in order to invest in an IC card. Honestly, even if you're going to Japan just one time. But for those who have experienced Japan and, just people who I've talked to who have traveled to Japan recently or even years ago, it's always a place that they want to go back to. So I promise you that you'll be using your IC card more than once. If you want more information about IC cards and all of that kind of stuff, I'll leave some resources in the description below. I feel like I've covered most of the main things for IC cards that you do need to know. But if you have any further questions, leave it in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts, your questions, all that kind of stuff. And let me know other topics about Japan that you're confused about, that you're worried about for your next trip. Maybe you want to move there and you need to figure out some stuff. Leave those in the comments below too, and I'll get back to you when I can. And I'll see you next time. Peace.